Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 6 from season 9, The Pursuit. If you enjoy these videos, please hit like and subscribe. The Pursuit was written by Michael McGreevy, who was also an actor on our show and did the episode The Braggart as Hobie, who was an aspiring baseball pitcher, and then he started writing episodes for our series as well, as did his father, Jon McGreevy, who wrote a number of our top episodes over the seasons. The episode was directed by Philip Leacock. At this point in the series, Ben has been taken prisoner and is in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And this setting was actually filmed, the POW camp, in the drained Drusilla's pond on our back lot. And in this opening shot here, you can see this Japanese soldier who is walking across a bridge. And that would be the bridge we typically see when anyone walks over the bridge of Drusilla's pond. But in this case, of course, there is no water in the pond, but you can see that it's not a terribly deep structure there, and when they could easily drain it when needed to use for dry land sets or put the water back in when we needed it for the pond. Ben is far from a model prisoner and is taking any opportunity he can to poke little jabs at the Japanese captors. He gets his fellow POWs to start singing, and it just irritates the commander of the camp. On the home front, Jim Bob has a pass coming up to go home, and his sergeant has a conversation with him before he heads home and says that he has a reputation of being a womanizer and that perhaps he should consider mending his ways a bit. For Jason, he is getting new orders and he's not sure where he's being sent, and the officer, Bergstrom, who he is getting his orders from, won't tell him. Finally, Jason has to bribe him with the last of the recipe that he has, and then it is revealed that he is being sent to Paris. Jim Bob was warned by his sergeant that Kathy Seals, a young woman, has been calling, asking for Jim Bob. And when he gets home, he basically tells the family to ignore any calls for him and just tell anybody he's not home, that he just wants to spend the time with his family. One evening after they have been kind of ribbing Jim Bob a bit, Jim Bob's been sharing stories and stuff, and the phone rings. Elizabeth answers it and says, no, Jim Bob is not home, and says it was a girl named Kathy. And he's pretending he doesn't. Kathy never heard of her, and so we're all kind of ribbing him. And finally he's had enough, and he gets up and he goes out onto the porch. I follow him out and have sort of a big sister, younger brother conversation with him. Sort of, again, a scene that in the past, likely it would have been Olivia who had that conversation. So it was nice to be able to step up into some of those more nurturing conversations with younger members of the family once, unfortunately, Michael wasn't on the show. Jim Bob does confess that he barely knows Kathy, and he was, getting ready to thinking he was going to be shipped out before the war in Europe was over. But he feels like she cares more about him than he does about her, and he just kind of is glad that there's some distance between them and that he's safe here at home. Mary Ellen says she's not so sure. Of course, the next thing we see is Kathy arriving at the Godsey store and looking to find out where the Walton house is, and conveys that she knows who Ike and Corbett are because Jim Bob has talked about them. And she gives the impression that she and Jim Bob are quite close and that they've had a relationship going on for some time. And Corbett urges Ike to give Kathy a ride to the Walton house, which he does. Kathy arrives, much to the surprise of Jim Bob, and he is not at all pleased about it. He then pretty much ditches her, and he's outside working on his car. Daddy comes out to talk to him and says, basically, look, she's in there. She's our guest, and you need to be nice to her while she is here. At dinner, she's telling all kinds of stories that Jim Bob has supposedly shared about all his heroism during the war and these missions, dangerous missions he went on. And of course, we all know that these are all fibs, but we're all kind of, smiling, but going along with it. And Jim Bob's getting more and more uncomfortable with the situation. We see here a stock footage shot of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, which lets us know we are now in Paris. So when we see Jason come into a building, we know that this is now supposed to be in Paris. And he finds out finally why he has been sent there when he finds out that Toni is there. And she has recommended him to be the music director for a show that is going to be put on for the troops that are still in Paris. Jason, of course, is thrilled to see Toni again. Jim Bob finally tells Kathy that he's not in love with her and that she needs to go back to Norfolk, where she's from. And she says she can't forget about him because she's going to have his baby. Not knowing what to do, Jim Bob talks to Daddy and explains about this one night that he had with Kathy. They went out dancing, and he was supposed to be shipping out the next day, so he had too much to drink, and he ended up back at Kathy's place, but he doesn't remember what happened, and he said he woke up in the morning in bed, but he couldn't remember anything. So he's trying to ask Daddy's advice on what he should do about his potential impending fatherhood. And Daddy won't give him an answer and just kind of says to Jim Bob, what do you think you should do? Jim Bob finds out that Kathy has left, and he goes to find her. She is at Ike's waiting for the bus back to Norfolk. And he says, come on, get in the car and let's go back. And when he brings her back to the house, some hours later, the family is all sitting on the porch. And Jim Bob announces they have had a long talk and that they have decided that they're going to get married as soon as possible. While Elizabeth and Cindy seem to be happy about this idea, Mary Ellen and Daddy and Aaron are really not at all sure. They're surprised and have their concerns about this decision. As Jason and Toni are planning the show there, they're in a cafe, and I noted that in the background, once again, we see two of our stand-ins who have little sort of roles in the background of the scene. We see that our stand-in Lynn Storer is a waiter in the cafe, and then another stand-in, Gordon Hodges, enters as a customer with a woman, and they come in and they are there in the background of the scene. So another use of our stand-ins when there was need for some extra bodies in a scene.
I'd like to talk to Kathy alone.
So she has this sort of conversation with her and really starts kind of interrogating her. She wants to know, she said she's concerned about her health and how is she feeling in her first trimester, which is typically a time when women don't feel so good. And she's going, oh, I feel great. And Mary Ellen asks if she's seen a doctor to have the pregnancy confirmed. She said yes, in Norfolk. And Mary Ellen asks who the doctor is, says that she knows a number of doctors down there. And when is she due? And again, Kathy can't answer these questions. And Mary Ellen says, I think it's rather unusual that you wouldn't even know when your baby is due. So Kathy gets very defensive about all of this, which of course raises yet another red flag about this situation. Clearly, I have shared this information with Daddy. And then later that evening, he goes and has a conversation with Jim Bob and Kathy and kind of just talks about the importance of honesty in a marriage, in a relationship. And it's not a good way to go into a relationship. He just kind of leaves them with that. That evening, neither Jim Bob nor Kathy are able to sleep as they give thought to what it is that Jon has said and the significance of the various different fibs that they have each told. At the prisoner of war camp, Ben has sewn an American flag because they have been forced to be saluting the Japanese flag for long periods of time in the scorching heat. So at this point, Ben has sewn this American flag and they raise that flag. And of course, they get into big trouble for that. The commander determines that Ben is the one who is responsible for this and has him thrown into this corrugated, basically heat box, as his punishment for this disobedience. As Jim Bob and Kathy talk, they both confess that they have told fibs, and Jim Bob feels bad about it, while Kathy comes back and basically confesses that she is not pregnant, but that she was just so in love with him that she, wanted to come up with some way to have him stay, but that she now feels terrible about it, and that she's going to go back home, and he's off the hook. So ultimately, we hear in the narration that she did go home, and that whether they ever were in communication again, unknown, but it was the last that Jim Bob and Kathy ever saw of each other. This was another episode with quite a few guest stars. Of course, we had many returning characters: Peggy Ray as Rose, Leslie Winston as Cindy, Lisa Harrison back as Toni Hazelton, Jason's girlfriend, and then Claire and Elizabeth Schoen, who played Ginny at this point in the series. Our main guest star was Jennifer Jason Leigh, who played Kathy. And Jennifer, of course, has had quite a career. She was born February 5th in Hollywood, California, and her father was the actor Vic Morrow. Early TV, she was in episodes of Beretta, Family, The Magical World of Disney, Trapper John M.D., and then she was in some prominent films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Grandview, USA, Miami Blues, Backdraft, Rush, Single White Female, Shortcuts, Dolores Claiborne, Road to Perdition, LBJ, The Hateful Eight, and she was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. So far, she has 73 nominations and 23 wins for various different awards. Actor Jordan Bennett, who was credited in this episode as Jordan Suffin, was back as Norman, and he did 6 episodes as Norman during this sort of story arc of Ben over in Japan. Actor Frank Catalano was Augie, also one of the POWs. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, and on TV he did episodes of Benson and much animation voice work on a lot of different TV shows. Jerry Fujikawa was the POW Camp commander. He was born February 18th, 1912 in Monterey, California, and died April 30th, 1983 in Los Angeles. On TV, he did episodes of The Twilight Zone, The Untouchables, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Wackiest Ship in the Army, I Spy, The Felony Squad, The Wild Wild West, Green Acres, Kung Fu, Policewoman, Police Story, and was in the films $1 Million Duck, Chinatown, Midway, Taxi, and MASH. Jerry Hoffman was Lieutenant Saunders. He was born September 23rd. On TV, he did episodes of Gunsmoke, 8 is Enough, Flamingo Road, 2 episodes of Falcon Crest. He did 3 episodes of The Waltons. In Season 7, the episode The Tailspin as Dr. Canfield. In Season 8, The Wager as the feed store clerk. And here in Season 9, in The Pursuit. Plus, he was in the reunion movie A Day for Thanks on Walton's Mountain as Van Kramer. Ken Michelman played Corporal Bergstrom, and he was born May 23rd in New York City. On TV, he did episodes of MASH, and he played Abner Goldstein in The White Shadow for 40 episodes. He did Police Squad, Heart to Heart, 30-something, The Bradys, where he did 4 episodes as Gary Greenberg, Matlock, The West Wing, and Grey's Anatomy. Richard Molnar played Billy, one of the other prisoners of war. He was born August 14th. On TV, he did episodes of MASH, Knots Landing, Simon and Simon, Blue Thunder, Dallas, Hunter, Highway to Heaven, Murder, She Wrote, Designing Women, Days of Our Lives, and did 10 episodes of Melrose Place. Ted Noose was Master Sergeant Bruner. He was born December 24th, 1930 in Pilsen, Illinois, and died April 26th, 2020 in Barrington, Illinois. He was an Army veteran in the Korean War and a former Chicago police officer. On TV, he did episodes of Barney Miller, Police Story, The Rockford Files, Chips, 8 is Enough, where he did 3 episodes as Coach, Lou Grant, Heart to Heart, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Hill Street Blues, Remington Steele, Highway to Heaven, Matlock, and 8 episodes of Days of Our Lives. and he was in the film Major League. Hatsuo Uda was the Japanese corporal. He was born September 17th, 1948, and died December 1st, 1981. He served in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. He did on TV episodes of Police Story, SWAT, Black Sheep Squadron, Policewoman, Operation Petticoat, Quincy, and he did 2 episodes of The Waltons, the season 6 episode The Recluse as Worker, and season 9 here in The Pursuit, and he was in the film Airplane. And then Dane Witherspoon was Clint, the other prisoner of war. And he was born December 27th, 1957, and died March 29th, 2014 in Denver, Colorado. On TV, he did episodes of 8 is Enough and 60 episodes of Santa Barbara as Joe Perkins. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Pursuit. I will be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, more episodes, and more of your questions in an Ask Judy, plus more special guests. Thanks for watching.